Pittsburgh Steelers fans, it is time once again for another episode of the Steelers Hangover. What are we hungover from? Well, maybe a little bit of everything. We're hungover from the trade deadline. We are hungover from the Steelers losing that game last week to the Philadelphia Eagles. Oof! That one packed a wallop. And we are hungover from maybe a break. Maybe we're feeling good and refreshed and ready to go. Hopefully those Pittsburgh Steelers will be as well. And we are going to talk to you today on this show. Why not to abandon the black and gold ship in the second half of 2022? Shannon White, or at least one I've never seen before. Shannon, what's going on?
Just beautiful weather here the last few days. So, with no Steeler game this weekend, was able to enjoy all that pretty weather out. And it's been beautiful today, too. I don't think it's going to last much longer, though. But I'm ready to talk some Steeler football.
Probably not going to last that much longer, but it still feels pretty good. Tony Defeo, what is up, my friend? Welcome to the show.
Well, thank you. And hi to you and hi to Shannon. It was a great weekend. I filled the void for the Steelers by winning a bowling championship. So, that was exciting. And I have a hangover from that, literally. So it was a fun Sunday.
So you are your entire team won, or this was individual? Tell us about it, Tony.
It can never be individual with me. I'm not that good, but my whole team won. We all came through and won. It was my third one, but in 13 years. So I wasted a lot of my prime years, and I should be held accountable. But still, three championships in 13 years is pretty good.
Well, Tony could star in the remake of Kingpin. It could be Kingpin 2 starring Tony.
Oh, gosh. Time to pay the rent, Tony.
All right.
That's all I got to say about that. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, I just shudder thinking about it. Let's just say that. And let's talk about the Steelers. Now, I'm going to go back before we talk about anything. Not Tony, but Shannon brought something up. And it's really interesting. And it is the weather. I'm going to go back to December 6th, 1998. Just because I was there at Three River Stadium to see the Steelers get annihilated by the Patriots 23-9. But I wore shorts. And that was December. And I'm looking at the weather from ProFootballReference.com, 63 degrees. I know it was close to 70 here in the great state of Maryland. How was it in Pittsburgh, Tony?
Oh, it was 75, 80 degrees on Sunday. It was beautiful. I keep forgetting it's late fall or whatever, or early fall, whatever it is, and it's not spring. It feels like it's spring. It feels like I'm looking forward to the summer, and here we have winter right on the doorstep.
Now, I'm not one of those guys who will wear shorts in the wintertime because that's just what I do. Like Dave Schofield will wear shorts. I mean, he could be in an Arctic tundra and he will wear shorts. That's just what he does. And in fact, very rarely have I seen Dave wear pants. But as far as everything goes, 63 degrees back in 1998, that was just beautiful. Just beautiful weather. So that's the kind of weather you experienced. Do you know the temperatures in West Virginia this weekend, Shannon?
Anywhere from 75 to 78.
Wow.
It's sunny, really pretty.
That's just absolutely incredible. I feel like it was a little bit nicer than 63 degrees when I was at that game in Pittsburgh in 19 days before Christmas back in 1998. Just so really interesting stuff. Sun is shining on Steeler Nation because, well, the Steelers did not lose. And if you listen to my show today, Bad Language, I talked about how the Steelers are at a fork in the road and which one do they take? Where do they go? There's so many things. And if there's one guy, and I called him the E.F. Hutton of BTSC, and let me ask you guys, if there's anybody on BTSC when he talks where you pay attention to and you listen, who would that be? I'm gonna throw somebody out there. I have a specific person in mind, In fact, I'm going to ask Shannon first because I bet you he has the right answer. Who do you think I'm talking about when I say the E.F. Hutton of the Pittsburgh Steelers? That when he says something, you take heed because you feel like he pretty much knows it.
Oh, of course, I have respect for all my colleagues, but
yes, I do too.
But Coach would have to be the guy. If I have a specific question, I would use the go to KT.
Yes, you know what? And I know a lot of us feel that way, including Jeff and Dave. They go to KT Smith as well. And I have the honor to be on a show with him for 30 to 40 minutes basically every Friday, but we recorded mostly on Thursday nights. Tony, would you agree with the expertise of Coach Smith?
Absolutely. He knows his stuff. When he illustrates things, it really helps me learn football and get a little better in that department.
So I talked to him on the show the other day. Whether you listen to it or not does not matter. We're going to try to do that same exercise here where I took the remaining 9 games from the Pittsburgh Steelers schedule. And I asked Kevin, with everything that's going on for the Pittsburgh Steelers, what he can see happening in those games. So making predictions for the final 9 games. And we're going to go ahead and do that here. So we are going to go ahead and look at the fact that why are some reasons not to abandon the black and gold ship? Well, you're going to see some players make their return or make their debut. And who is in full participation today, Shannon?
Well, TJ Watt was back. Yeah,
absolutely. And Tony, who has been placed on the 53-man roster, getting ready to make his Steeler debut?
You talking about the recent acquisition, or are you talking about DeMonte Kazee? I'm excited about both.
I'm talking about DeMonte Kazee, but go ahead with the other one too.
Well, no, I'm really excited about Kazee because people were talking about the possibilities that he could, the defense could really have a lot of interesting looks with him in there, with 3 safety looks, and then he had that injury in the last preseason game. So I'm really excited to see what he can do because I know he could play deep safety, and that might free Micah Fitzpatrick up to be Micah Fitzpatrick. And of course, William Jackson III, I'm intrigued by him simply because of the history between him and Pittsburgh dating back to 2016, that draft. So, he supposedly is better at man than he is at zone. So we'll see if he fits in better here than he did in Washington.
And Washington's coach, Ron Rivera, came out and said, that he is a pure man-to-man guy, and that just did not fit the Commander's scheme. Shannon, what's that make you feel?
Well, a lot of this I've covered in my article that posted today about glimmers of hope for the second half of the season. It's going to be a 2-part series. Today was the first article, and it was on the defense. And, they've talked all along about doing those 3 safety sets because, Edmonds can play like a hybrid linebacker near the line, and then Kazee can play in the slot, and he has experience there. He can play middle, and he can play deep safety. And then, of course, Fitzpatrick is the ball hawk. So, hopefully that'll be less of Robert Spillane, in coverage in the middle of the field and more Kazee. I think that's the hope we all have for the second half.
Well, those are definitely 3 players to get really excited about. To have, now he did not practice today, being William Jackson III, but just the idea of those 3 players in there makes you feel like there is a glimmer of hope that fork in the road that the Steelers are at might be going in a winning direction. Now, before I get on to our prediction here, I made a promise on my show, Bad Language, today. And obviously, you guys did not listen to that show because I said that I was going to yell at both of you. And I'm going to go ahead and scold you guys. Even though I feel like I'm older brother to you guys. I feel like that. And I love you like brothers. But I've got a bone to pick with you guys. And everybody's entitled to their opinion, and we know that. But I got to ask you guys, how in the blue heck can you give the acquisition of William Jackson III a C? That's where I'm at, because you guys we didn't have the opportunity to go ahead and put out scores this week because there's no game. So Jeff pulled a swerve, and it was a great replacement. We had to grade the acquisition of William Jackson III and the departure of Chase Claypool. And I gave them both A's. We're not going to talk about the Claypool thing because, it's the trade works and makes sense. Even Jeffrey Benedict, who is like me, will miss the heck out of Chase Claypool. He even gave it a B. So I understand that. But the reason I'm going to scold you a little bit is, guys, yes, the man is 30 years old. I get that. But there's no lose. Where do you lose here? Where do you lose it all here? I'm going to start with Tony.
I mean, it's just that the fact that his resume hasn't been that impressive up until now. It's really based on his performance up until now, not necessarily, salary cap ramifications or the fact that they can get rid of him after this year if they have to. It's just the enthusiasm for it, because it kind of feels like they're picking, because you've seen at this point he's basically just a name from the past that's intriguing because he was a former first round pick. That's really what it was. It's not that I don't think they don't have much to lose with bringing him in here. They didn't risk much. It's just he hasn't done much up until this point, so it's not something I'm extremely excited about. But we'll see.
Shannon, go ahead.
I give it a C, basically as an incomplete. If he comes in and the Steelers will actually allow him to do what he does best, which is play press man coverage. The last time the Steelers had two cornerbacks that could do that was when they had Hayden and Steven Nelson. And they pressed a good bit, and that allowed their pass rush to create havoc because there wasn't somebody open immediately. There's so many drop-offs right now and guys that, they can get that ball out quick to because they play all 5 yards. But during that season, they had Hayden and Nelson pressing a lot. And that was some of the best pass defense we've seen in the last 5 or 6 years. So if he comes in and they at least allow him on his side, on his man, to do some press, I think it could work out, especially if the pass rush comes back with TJ, and it becomes effective like it always has been when he's in there. Then that would be a real benefit, especially with the 3 safety package. I think a little bit of it was Mike Tomlin always wanted him. He was going to take him if the Bengals hadn't have took him 1 pick ahead of the Steelers. And I think it was like he finally got he's the guy. That was somebody he'd always wanted to have. And with Terrell Austin, being familiar with him and having coached him before, they realized it was a low risk move. But he is dealing with some back issues. Probably wasn't real happy with the Redskins because they obviously wasn't using him the way he could be effective and the way he wanted to be used. So hopefully coming to Pittsburgh will revitalize his career. But I just give it a C because it's more of an incomplete grade until we see what happens.
I get that. And the reason I give it an A is this. And I'm looking at some great comments here. I've got Myrna, Jane, and Bert, Ron Schultz, Felicia Bellard. I've got Brian Brown, Brian Harrington. Did I mention Ron Schultz, Jennifer Pruser, Brian Harrington, Jared Devil? So I'm getting some great comments here. And what I love about it is the fact that, yeah, there are concerns about his back. There's concerns that he's 30. Even it was said, I believe Jennifer said, he looked lost in some of the video out there. But now a lot of you are saying, oh, wait a second, but there's no downside because you don't lose anything. And that's what you guys are saying. And you're saying, well, hey, if it works out, it's going to be awesome. That's exactly the point that I am trying to say. Tyler W. says Jackson 3 has a lot to prove and a lot to lose. This is a guy fighting for his career. But by bringing a man-to-man guy on a team that likes to play man, on a team that a lot of people complained about Joe Hayden was too old. when they brought him in, and a problem, and they shouldn't have brought him in. But the reason I gave him an A is because I'm not concerned about what happens as much as a lot of people. I'm concerned with the fact that as a move, an Omar Khan and the continuing saga of Omar Khan making moves that make you go, yeah, that's a good move. This is a great move to me. This is an A move. And it's the reason because if he stinks, you gave it a shot. If you get something out of him, it's good. If you get something, it might be better than Akello Witherspoon. And he's brought in because apparently they're not believing in Akello Witherspoon right now. So he's brought in with a chance to improve that. If he improves that situation and they look better, money doesn't matter. Because the money this year, the $3 million or so, that's already spent. Doesn't matter. I mean, your salary cap this year, you're not doing anything with the salary cap anyways. You lose some money, even not a lot, but you get some relief by trading Chase Claypool. Not a lot. You're still doling out more, but you know that money doesn't matter. And then the salary cap next year, if you have to pay this man $13 million next year, which is what he's due and what he has earned over the years. But if you have to pay him, if I tell you right now, Shannon, Tony, the Steelers have to pay William Jackson III in 2023 $13 million, what are you going to say? You're going to say Yahoo. You know why? Because he came in and did something good. This is his audition. Because you could let him go and lose nothing. The draft compensation, the compensation, a 7th round pick, you're getting back with him in 2025, and a 6th round pick you're losing in 2025. Conditional pick, who cares? They kick the can down the road all the time. No one cares about that pick in 2025. You're not even going to worry about it in 2025 either. But if you have to dole out that money to him next year, that means he did his job and played well. So I'd be excited. Shannon?
Yeah, that would be great if that happens. I think that the best case scenario is that he comes in, they do use him correctly. He proves to be a really good fit for the defense, the culture, with Tomlin and the coaching staff. And then they have a chance to, maybe restructure his contract at the end of the year. I do not see him, based on his level of play to this point in his career, that he'll make $13 million with the Steelers next year. But
I don't either.
A restructure is quite possible if he's, has success. And I mean, it's quite a different culture in Pittsburgh than it is in Cincinnati or in Washington. So he might really, kind of like Terrell Edmonds or one of them guys, take a little less money to play for the Steelers, and more of a reasonable contract at his age and productivity. So yeah, but hopefully it'll work out.
If he's on this team next year, this is definitely an A trade.
Yeah,
because they're not going to keep him. I mean, if he stinks, and if he stinks, you're like, hey, at least we tried. Hey, well, Tony, just like asking somebody out. You don't ask, you don't get.
Right. Yeah. I have a lot of experience with that asking part. Anyway,
what if William Jackson III's the one, Tony?
Well, yeah. Well, that's the thing, though. That's the cautionary tale, I guess, is because look at Akello Witherspoon last year. He really came on at the end of the year, so they signed him a new deal. Now he looks totally lost. So they're going to have to be really sure about him going into next year, because they weren't even willing to pay Steven Nelson $8 million 2 years ago, and they moved up from Joe Hayden, who probably wanted a little bit too much. And I thought those guys were still playing better than what we have right now, what you see right now with the secondary. So they're going to have to be sure. Now I realized they had salary cap problems going into 2021, so that had a lot to do with moving on from Nelson. But the point is, it's still going to be a lot of money to pay him, even though they have more salary cap room. So they're going to have to be sure.
And you brought up something really good there and really interesting. And I don't know the answer. I know he was with the Eagles at one point. Where's Steven Nelson now?
I don't know.
He's with the Houston Texans.
Is he doing anything? Is he playing?
He starts for him.
He starts. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, right now, Houston's the team where dreams go to die right now. But hopefully they play better. But those red helmets are sweet. I'll say that.
They look nice, yes.
But with the Texans, I don't think he's a big factor right now. I mean, he might be starting, but that team has one win and they've got the tie.
Did you watch the game Thursday night against the Eagles?
I watched some. I watched the second half.
They played way better than the Steelers. They had way more energy, more effort. They got a top running back in Pierce, their rookie.
I just traded for him too.
Yeah, their offensive line, they've got money invested in it, something the Steelers don't have. They've got some experience and some youth. They look really good. They have their secondary. Nelson's the older guy on that secondary. They got a lot of young guys at corner and safety, and you can see they have a lot of talent. If both teams are rebuilding, the Steelers and the Texans, but the Texans are it seems to me to be like a year ahead in their rebuilding because of what happened with Watson and everything. And you could really see the difference. But it was something how much money and experience that the Texans had in that line and how that they was able to run the ball very effectively against the Eagles. And they held up a lot better in pass protection than the Steelers. But, of course, Steelers have the least expensive offensive line in the league, and I think it's showing up.
Absolutely. Speaking of fantasy football, I did trade for him I'm in a 14-man league, and it's a keeper league. Mm-hmm. So I'm not doing well right now. I decided to go ahead, and I feel like the Pittsburgh Pirates. I'm dumping for the future. And so I just picked up Pierce, and it was on paper, it looked like, why would you be trading Patrick Mahomes for... Well, I can't keep Patrick Mahomes next year because I can't keep him because he's a number one pick. So I got him. I got Garrett Wilson from the Jets, and I got somebody else, and I got a really good deal. And so I have guys that I can keep for 5 or 6 years. Like I've had Kamara on that team for like 6 years because I drafted him very, very low, and I was able to keep him for a while. But with fantasy football, Shannon, I've been sending you a trade request for a long time. You've been blowing me off. What's up? And they're good deals. I'm a generous GM.
I do remember one offer, but
it was a blockbuster. You came out ahead.
I just I'm not a swashbuckler, I guess. I don't do a lot of willing and dealing during the fantasy season. I don't put enough time in it to research and see how it'd come out. So.
All right. Well, I'm going to send you another one, and then I'm going to I even called you, and you didn't even call me back. I'm like, Shannon always calls me back. He just doesn't want to deal with me in fantasy football. Tony, we'll get you in a league next year. We'll have some fun. We'll do a hangover league, but we'll have like very bizarre roles. How about that?
Well, you're guaranteed not finishing in last place then, so that'd be a good reason to bring me on.
Absolutely. Hey, let's take a break, and we're going to do those predictions when we come back here on the Hangover, the bye week edition, and reasons not to abandon that black and gold ship. You stick around. My way. Oh, come on, girl. Look at your mama. Don't be so mean. Ain't the worst looking man you've ever seen. Subway train. The magical sounds of the Jerry Cherry Band. JCB, who's usually in the live chat a little bit later on all these shows. Great guy, great musician. Check those out wherever you download. I think I got mine on. I got my stuff on Apple Music, and he's really good. He's the tunes are so awesome. Check him out. And that's just one of the many. If you listen to any of these songs, they're all Jerry Cherry, exclusively here on BTSC. So let's get into it, guys. We have got 9 games left in this season. Some people are thinking, hey, I want that high draft pick. Some people are thinking, screw the draft pick. Let's just get momentum. But let me ask you this question first. With that momentum comes something even better, and it's faith in Kenny Pickett. So I'll start with you, Tony. How many wins do you think Kenny Pickett needs in the final 9 for everybody to feel, here we go, it's looking good?
Well, yeah, I agree with Shannon that his development is the most important thing over the last 9 games. But if they don't win a lot of games, we're probably going to be questioning his development. So I'd say with 9 games left, if they can finish 4 and 5, that might keep the faith as far as what we think of Kenny Pickett. Because if they win 4 out of the last 9 games or 5 out of the last 9 games, something like that, that tells me that maybe he will have improved as the season goes along. And to me, again, that's the most important thing is his development.
Shannon White, what do you think? How many wins does Kenny Pickett need to continue to be the guy? Or we have a lot of people in the live chat over the offseason saying, go ahead and pick a quarterback.
Again, I don't think it's as much wins as it is improvement, sustainable and, consistent improvement to where I keep going back to the 1 out of 12 on third downs against the Eagles. I mean, they are they're negative 77 at point differential. They're losing by almost 10 points a game, 9 point something a game average. They're just the worst offense in the NFL at the moment. Up to this point, of course, they didn't play last week, but I think they need to focus little and build upon small successes, like improving this third down. Having more creativity and more effective first down, second down, get in more manageable third downs, stay on the field. Worry about stuff of that nature, developing a running game. All that will help Kenny because, it appears he has the intangibles. I feel like he does. I don't know, you don't know if a guy's going to be elite till they get there and they prove it under the lights and the big pressure packed moments, but he seems cool under pressure. And that's what I'm looking for starting out here is can he build on what he's already done so far? I mean, because we really didn't learn a lot in that murderer's row of games that he went through against those defenses. The Steelers were outclassed on both sides of the ball in all them games pretty much. And, they had chances against Miami, but I still think that we'll hopefully get more of a true measurement of what he can do in the second half of the season, something they need to know before they go into the draft.
What's your gut saying right now, quarterback for 2023? Even though I don't want to talk too much about 2023, but do you think Kenny could lose that position in the next 9 games, Tony?
I do not. In fact, I was going to try to butt in there. People are saying, you got to draft the quarterback now. That's what they were saying when I was following Twitter during the Eagles game, which is probably always a bad idea, but they were saying it's time I think they made a mistake with Kenny Pickett. But if you look at Jalen Hurts is a great example of somebody that was struggling for a couple of years. And now look at that team. Justin Fields looks like he's starting to put it together. Josh Allen is, of course, a great example of someone who struggled early on and now might be the best quarterback going. So, I think there's a 100% chance that he's the quarterback next year. I think you have to stick with him. You have to, like I've been saying, you have to draft the guy, put him in there as soon as, by the end of the first season. It turns out by the end of the 4th game, and then you let him develop for 2 or 3 years, and then you make a decision.
Shannon White, I'm going to ask you the same question, but I'm going to ask you this. Do you think that was Omar Khan's choice? Kenny Pickett?
I don't know. Honestly, I think they was, as a franchise, they were bound and determined they were going to take a quarterback because, as we know, a quarterback on his rookie deal, you have 5 years in a favorable financial situation with the salary cap to really load up and take a run at rebuilding your roster. I don't know if the Steelers realized that they had so much rebuilding to do. I think they thought they were closer than they actually are. Therefore, if they do get these high picks, if the Steelers struggle in the second half and they end up with a top 10 pick, I think you got to take best player because they have so many holes and you only get so many opportunities to get a generational talent. The more picks you can have in the top 100, the better odds you're going to find that level of talent. The teams that rebuild the quickest have multiple picks in the early rounds, and they utilize that successfully. The Steelers need a stud on the offensive line. They need a stud young defensive lineman. They could use an edge. They could use a number one cornerback. So there is, there's a lot there that they could utilize that pick on because they don't want to be picking that early again. But the bottom line, they've got to build the foundation of the offense and the defense, which is the lines. If they rebuild that, success is going to come. I mean, Jalen Hurts did not look good as a rookie. And people was wondering, would the Eagles pick a quarterback this year? I mean, a lot of people thought they were going to. Kenny Pickett was somebody they mentioned a lot because he's from Philly, and people thought that the Eagles might take him. Well, now look, the Eagles, look like the best team in the NFC. So, again, but the Eagles' offensive and defensive line is their foundation, and that's why they're so good. And the Steelers, regardless of what happens, they need to focus on them two positions.
You know what? I like what you said about Jalen Hurts. I'm also going to go a little bit further. If you watched the game last night, Tennessee and Kansas City, wow. That was bad quarterback play from a guy who I believe that's only his second game. So you can't say that Malik Willis is going to fail. I'm just saying right now, I feel a little more confident of having Kenny Pickett than Malik Willis. He couldn't get anything done yesterday. And I don't think the Chiefs are juggernauts, but the Chiefs are silently good in a lot of places on defense. So all I'm going to say here is I'm going to give Kenny Pickett so much more time, and I'm going to give Malik Willis more time. But yesterday, wow, that was rough. There was, at least with Kenny Pickett right now, you feel like there's a chance because the passing game was not there in Tennessee. Any thoughts on that, guys?
I think it's it's just the same thing you see with a lot of young quarterbacks. I mean, sometimes when they start out, it looks really, really bad. But the one thing I'll say though is the one thing that's maybe different from what Kenny Pickett is going through is the Titans are a pretty good team. They have a good system in there. They have a well-rounded roster. So, they shouldn't be relying on him as much as, they are Derrick Henry and some other pieces of that offense. So I don't know what that means for them that they struggle so much on offense and they didn't rely on other things because, the Steelers can't rely on the running game right now. So, the Titans, I don't know what that was, but that was ugly. You are right.
So, guys, I talked about Kevin Smith being our EF Hutton, and I didn't explain why, because Kevin Smith feels like the Steelers could possibly win 6 out of their next 9 games in the exercise that we did. So we're going to go ahead and do that exercise as well. I'm going to start with the New Orleans game, and I'm just going to throw in the fact Michael Thomas is gone. They're playing with Andy Dalton at quarterback, and that is a team that is not spectacular, and they're not at home where they're a lot tougher. So, with that being said, New Orleans, Shannon White.
Well, I made a pick. We kind of did this in my last 2 podcasts. when I was Know Your Enemy, me and GB went through some of the picks, and I had them losing to the Saints.
Okay.
And then I was on with Touchdown Under with Matty P, and I picked them to beat the Saints. So I had them with 5 wins, and then Friday I had them with 6 wins, and I couldn't figure out where but that's the game, because part of me is expecting the Steelers to come out and it looked like the same Steelers against the Saints. The Saints shut out the Raiders. Now, we don't know what the Saints are going to look like later on tonight against the Ravens, but they shut out the Raiders, beat them 24-0. And they shut down Devontae Adams and Derek Carr. They have a good defense. And the Steelers, if they don't, like we said, go back to the fundamentals, go back to the basics, build slowly, and try to, start doing things they can do and do consistently, I'm afraid they're going to come out and lose the game coming out of the bye if they don't change, because it seems like they're being very resistant to change this year.
Tony, what are your thoughts?
Well, coming off a bye, I anticipate them tweaking the offense. They have to tweak the offense. If they don't tweak the offense, they're crazy. So I anticipate maybe them throwing some wrinkles at the Saints. And you got TJ Watt coming back, and Kazee possibly, and Jackson hopefully with the back injury. So I expect a better defensive performance. And the Saints will be coming off a short week playing on Monday Night Football. So I'm going to go ahead and plus they do pretty well against NFC teams at home, especially at 1 o'clock games. So I'm going to go ahead and say they're going to win a close game.
I'm actually thinking that this is the fork in the road, that this is going to tell you a lot about the Pittsburgh Steelers with this one game. And I know I've said that a few times this year. If they stink this game up, then I'm not going to give them much notice the rest of the year. I'm not going to turn on them. I'm not going away.
No,
but
right.
I'm thinking this is what's going to tell us. If they win this game, then they're in it to win it. Like Jermaine could drink about 16 Heineken, not born again. But if I was, I'd ask to come back with a little more love. Kid Rock. Tony, go ahead. You had your hand up.
Oh, well, I used this information. Last when they started off 2-6 in 06 after the Super Bowl, they got their act together against the Saints at then Heinz Field. So maybe that's an omen that they can start turning things around. Yeah, Willie Parker rushed for 200 yards. It was a great day. He killed my fantasy team that day, but it was still worth it. So
it didn't matter though, did it? Were you at that game?
No,
I was. I thought you were too.
Mm-mm.
I thought we discussed that game. I was actually at that game, and the whole time I'm thinking, wow, this is awesome, because they were. You knew Willie Parker was going to come close to breaking the record, and he didn't, but he did it later on that season, which I was in attendance as well. But that was just a fun game, because that was the year that they went to the NFC Championship game too.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't realize that with those Saints losing to the Bears, they could have been a Super Bowl team that year. So let's go ahead, and I'm going to put it down as a win. But then again, I'm wrong all the time. But let's go to Cincinnati. It's not in Cincinnati. It's in Pittsburgh. Who's missing? Jamar Chase is most likely going to be missing in that game. Owuzi's out for the year. I hope I pronounced his name right. So let's go ahead. I'm going to start with Tony on this one.
This one's puzzling because a lot of times the Bengals look like they're back to their 2021 form, but then again, the other night they got shellacked by the Browns. So without Jamar Chase playing at home, I'm gonna say that they might pull this one out too.
Shannon.
Until they lost to the Browns, the Bengals had not give up any touchdowns in the second half all year. And I think their defense, they did lose their starting cornerback, but they seem like they're better equipped to handle that. Their inside linebackers is very tough, and they've got it. I just think they got enough defense that the Steelers are going to really struggle, and I think the Bengals are going to win that one.
Now, Ron Schultz says Mixon won't get 5 TDs every week. He's absolutely correct on that one. And he said something else earlier that I want to bring up as well. If the schematics of the offensive play calling doesn't change, New Orleans will smoke us like a cheap cigar, which, I think if the schematics don't change, and Tony talked about the fact that they'd be crazy not to change it, and Shannon agreed with that. So that's very true. You have got to look at the fact that things have to change with the Steelers. But I'm going to go ahead and say this is a loss. And the reason I'm going to say it's a loss is you're going to hear me say this later on. I do not feel like the Steelers are going to get swept by one team. I don't see the Bengals being swept in the season by the Steelers. I don't think the Steelers are good enough to sweep the Bengals. I mean, I feel that they're going to win some games, but this is one that I don't think they're going to win. The next one we have, it's in Indianapolis. It's in prime time, and you cannot move this game. We're stuck because you can't flex Monday night until next year. As you know, Indianapolis just got rid of Frank Reich. Frank Reich is a genius offensive mind. Earlier, people were asking about the fact if Frank Reich would be a good coordinator for the Steelers. Absolutely, he'd be a good coordinator for the Steelers. He might be a head coach somewhere else. He might want to go somewhere else. Steelers don't have an opening at coordinator, though. So with that being said, I'm not going to discuss next year with that. I'm just going to say, hey, that'd be awesome if that happens. Just like when Flores got fired, I was like, he's going to be a head coach somewhere. He's not going to, don't expect him to come to the Steelers. And I was wrong. So there's so many different things to look at, but let's look at Indianapolis. If the Steelers fix what they need to fix, then this is a winnable game. They should beat Indy if they fix everything. So I'm going to make it a win. Tony?
Yeah, it feels like, if they go into that game with some momentum, and they have a new quarterback now, the culture in shambles, and they have Jeff Saturday as their interim coach now. So
no experience.
Yeah, it's crazy.
At any level.
It's
I don't
crazy.
think even high school.
Yeah, and that might be a game that you see a lot of Steeler fans in attendance. So I could see them winning that game.
Shannon?
I've said on both shows that I think they win this one because I think the Colts did what they had to do, because based on everything you hear, that was just a toxic environment. It's one thing when you're not having success on the field, but when players don't want to show up at the facilities each day, and it, you're doing more damage keeping a coach if that's the case. I think the Steelers should have thought of that with Matt Canada, but they didn't. And hopefully, it'll work out for the Steelers. But yeah, I think that they will win that game because they got Watt. And as long as he's still healthy, I think they can beat the Colts.
All right. So you guys have them. So Tony, you have them 3-0 so far?
Yeah, I'm shocked. I didn't anticipate this exercise leading to them being 5-6.
So Shannon, you have them at 2-1, right? And I have them at 2-1.
I had them losing to the Saints and the Bengals and beating the Colts. So
okay, so you have them at 1-2.
Yeah.
All right. Let's go ahead and look at a home game against the Baltimore Ravens. This is a really interesting one here. I'm going to go first on this one too, and I'm going to say that this is why I said this earlier about the Bengals. I don't see the Ravens sweeping the Steelers. I don't see the Steelers sweeping the Ravens. I can see this being 1-1, but I'm not going to give them this game. Not yet. The Steelers are not good enough yet to be 3-1 in the next 4 games. So I'm just going to say I'm putting them at 2-2 here. So I'm going to go ahead and say loss. I feel better with it being at home, but we saw in recent years they have no problem winning in Baltimore. Baltimore has no problem winning in Pittsburgh either. Shannon, go ahead.
I think they'll win this one at home with home field advantage. I think the offense will start, at least being a little bit more consistent. And I think that with White back and the 3 safety package and Jackson, I think that they'll give because he plays like he's a very physical safety, as a slot corner. So he'll match up good with the Ravens. So I think the Steelers win the home game against the Ravens.
I definitely, before I go to Tony, I want to see the stamp of Brian Flores on this game because he has always done well against Lamar Jackson.
Mm-hmm.
Tony.
Yeah, you're right. He does. Flores is really good against Jackson. So are the Steelers in general. Their defense has really fared well against him over the years. So I can see this being a low-scoring game, but it just feels like a loss to me. I don't know why. Like you said, the Ravens have a pretty good history of winning at Acrisure Stadium, and Pittsburgh knows how to win over in Baltimore. So I see this being a low-scoring game that comes down to Justin Tucker, unfortunately, and it breaks the momentum that I have them on right now. So 5-7.
Yeah, I'm definitely, if the Steelers are underdogs, I'm looking at that because this game, if over under is 4 points, you might want to even take the under. It's going to be very tight. Let's go ahead. And actually, I might have screwed up here. No, I didn't. The next game is week 13. Week 13, I think I did screw up because week 13 was actually supposed to be Atlanta. And week 14, I'm doing this on the top of my head here. So we'll flip that, but that's another road game in Atlanta. Atlanta is a first place team, but look at the division Atlanta's in.
Mm-hmm.
Tony, Atlanta. Okay, Tony's muted, so let's go to Shannon first.
I think that they beat Atlanta in Atlanta. The things that Atlanta does well, the Steelers should be able to handle, and they don't have the receiver talent to really exploit the Steelers where they've been struggling. And so I'm going to say the Steelers win that one.
Tony.
I think that the Falcons they look a lot better than I thought they would this year. I don't know if they have like Shannon said, the firepower to exploit Pittsburgh's defense, but I think Pittsburgh's going to lose this game. It's going to be a game that everybody's going to expect them to win, being that they're in my scenario that they're on a bit of a roll and they're going to probably walk away with a disappointing loss.
I'm going to go ahead and say that the Steelers go ahead and lose this game as well. That does not mean that I don't believe in them. I really actually had them winning this game. This is actually a pretty good matchup, if you ask me, for the Steelers. But I want to be realistic here, so I'm going to say that the Steelers are 2-3 at this point. Now we have another NFC opponent. It's the Carolina Panthers. I think the Carolina Panthers want that number 1 pick really bad. And they're not tanking, but I think the organization is doing everything they can by trading everybody with a name away. So I'm just going to go ahead and say that that's going to be a win in Carolina. They've only lost once to the Carolina Panthers, and that was the very first game in 1996 that they played. So they have won every other game. I'm going to say that continues. Tony.
Blowout. Their first blowout in a long time. As you said, Carolina's tanking, and I see another scenario where Steeler Nation invades that stadium and takes over. So it's going to be their first impressive win of the year.
I guarantee you. I bet you Jeremy Betts is there. I'll tell you that. He's a Carolina kid. Shannon White.
Well, the Steelers will win that game because they're going to have a secret weapon. Because me and my family is going to be there.
Woo!
You're going to that game too. That's
yes.
awesome.
Yes, and I've been to 5 Steeler games, and they've never lost. So you could put that in as a win.
Yeah, but Coach Smith was 7-0 before the Philadelphia game, and he went. I'm not trying to. I am not trying to say that the White family mojo is not going to come through here, but I just want to warn you with that. So sorry about that. All right. So Tony, you've already picked, right?
I have.
Okay. So, like I said, that's a win. So for me, it looks like 3-3. Now, let's get interesting here. Christmas Eve, the Raiders, a day after the 50th anniversary of the Immaculate Reception, Franco Harris getting his number retired. The Raiders are not good right now, and I do not understand it. It tells me that McDaniels is not very good at all as a head coach. He is indeed an offensive coordinator. He's one of those guys like the Norv Turners, the great coordinators, the Wade Phillipses, defensive coordinator. You know, you have those ones that are just good at being a coordinator. And I just think that that's what we're seeing in Vegas because there's no reason that that team should be bad. I'm going to say win on Christmas Eve. Shannon White.
I just think that you're going to have all the legends there. It's going to be a huge game for both franchises, but being in Pittsburgh, I think the Steelers will win that game.
Tony.
They just have their number. The Raiders have their number. Derek Carr seems to do really well against them. As you said, they might be the best bad team in the NFL. Devontae Adams, they have him now. So I have to say this every time they have a year like this, they lose to the Raiders at home. So I think this is going to be a loss, unfortunately. They're going to win the Immaculate Reception. They're going to get their revenge.
Shannon, let me ask you a question real quick. Do you remember anything about 2003, the last losing season? They played the Raiders at home in December and beat them 21-20. This was the year after the Raiders were in the Super Bowl. So I hear what Tony's saying, but I'm saying, you're not losing the Immaculate Reception game.
Oh, and by the way, sorry.
Go ahead.
By the way, under my scenario, this clinches Mike Tomlin's first losing season. So.
Oh, yeah. Okay. All right. I see. I smell what you're cooking there.
Yeah.
Steeler Lee gives us $1.99. Thank you so much for the tip jar. I live in North Carolina. It's a Steeler state. Yeah. I think it's been a Steeler state for a long time. And just because, you get 25 years of the Panthers doesn't mean that, some people do not go away from that. And ESPN apparently agrees with me on that. So let's go ahead and go to week 17. And I believe that is a road game with Baltimore. In Baltimore, gentlemen, where are you going with it?
Want me to go?
Yeah.
Okay. I think the Ravens are going to have too much at stake at this point in Pittsburgh season. Under my scenario, it's going to be over. I think they're gonna. It's going to be a close game as it usually is, but I think the Ravens are going to pull this out because they're going to probably be playing for the division at that point.
Shannon,
I think this is going to look a lot like the 2019 season. The Steelers are going to, in my scenario, still have an outside shot, and then the end of the season is not going to be good. I think the Ravens are going to beat them pretty bad in Baltimore. And because they're playing for playoffs and the Steelers are just playing to hurt their draft positioning.
Well, let's go back to 2015. The Steelers were a very good team. They should have been in the AFC Championship game. They got screwed in that Denver game. I will tell you that. They got everybody hurt before that game. And the Peyton Manning was down. Nobody wants to talk about that, but I keep on saying Peyton Manning was down.
He slid.
Yeah, he was down. So all I'm going to say is the Ravens, I went to that game after Christmas. Ravens had like 4 wins. That was their 5th win. Ryan Mallett was the quarterback. And they beat a very good Pittsburgh Steelers team. I'm just saying I don't think they're going to get swept. So I'm going to go ahead and say that they win that game. Tony, you already said you gave them the loss. Shannon gave them a loss. Do you know your record right now going on the last game?
I'm 6-10.
You're 6-10 going in the last game. So, Shannon,
I'm
what's your
7-9.
You're 7-9.
Uh-huh.
And me, oh gosh, I don't even know what I said anymore. I didn't keep good track. But I think for some reason, I think I have them at 4-4. So I'm going to go with 4-4 right now. And I'm just going to say Cleveland Browns 5-4. Browns suck.
Yeah.
They're not doing anything to get better. I don't care if Deshaun's there or not. 5-4. So I'm putting the Pittsburgh Steelers at 7-10 for the year. And I think that's a victory. Go ahead with your pick, Shannon.
The Browns will be still competitive. I think the Browns found their formula for winning last game against the Bengals. They've got a great offensive line. They got Chubbs. They kept Hunt. They didn't trade him. If they can stay out of their own way and just let Watson try to run the same offense that Brissett did, I think they're going to have a good second half of the season. I think the Browns beat the Steelers, and the Steelers go 7-10 on the year.
Tony.
Based on what I saw in Cleveland with Brissett, it's going to be tough to stop that offense for them, even with TJ Watt back. So I unfortunately, I think the Browns are slightly better than them right now. There's hope that they'll fall apart between now and then, but I think it's going to be a loss.
So you're saying what?
6-11.
6-11, which makes a lot of sense. I can see 6-11 happening. I'm thinking at best the Steelers really are at 7-10. At best, they could be. My gosh, this team has the ability, just if they win out, to be 11-6. But that's not happening, and we know that's not happening. But I know Brian Brown, who makes them 17-0 every year, and I love Brian for that. He and Jeff Hartman must be brothers. So I'll just go ahead and say that I don't see them in 11-6. Look, I don't see them having a winning season. I don't think a winning season. I'm adopting Shannon White from a few weeks back, and I'm saying a winning season does not matter because that's just a Mike Tomlin number. I don't think that number is going to get Tomlin fired having a losing season. I don't think it is.
No.
But what I do think is that if you get to 6 wins, you get to even 7 wins, then you know what happens? Then it's an upside going into next year.
Right.
Just like the Pittsburgh Steelers, after that horrible 88 year, 89 was good. They went to the playoffs and went deep into the playoffs, as far as I'm concerned. When you look at the last losing season, they won 2 out of their last 4. And they actually won 4 out of their last 8. Brian Harrington says he goes ahead and gives us some money in the super chat, in the tip jar. I'm not saying tank, but should we put our second and third string guys into develop them more accurately for next year? You know what? I'm just going to say this. I say what you do is you play to win every week, but if you have a guy that you don't think is going to be around next year and you want to evaluate talent, you put some talent in there. But you don't do it to the extent where you're trotting out a Pittsburgh Pirate lineup with guys that were in AAA all season. I'm saying that you don't do that. Am I off base here, guys? Tony.
Well, I think you have to play who you think your best young players are. They don't necessarily have to be second and third stringers. I mean, you don't have to find out about your backups. You just have to find out about the guys that you feel you want to take with you into the future. So I don't necessarily think you have to put second and third stringers in there. Not if you don't feel like they have anything to offer for you for the future.
Absolutely, Shannon.
A rebuilding team needs to play young talent, especially if you have guys like Devin Bush, Terrell Edmonds, different people that might not be coming back next year, might not be getting a contract. You play some younger guys who could be part of the rebuild because everything's pushed into the future. You do try to win every week, but they need to player development, especially young talent. And one of the ways to do that is you don't have to start them, but give them a few reps. See how they handle the big leagues. And then that'll give you a better idea of what you need to look at in free agency in the draft.
All right, so let's go ahead and get on out of here. It has been a raucous time, a very good chat. We are not thinking that this is going to be a complete turnaround, but this team could get themselves ready for 2023 with improvement and a showing. And it's how they play on the field, like Shannon says, that definitely matters. And I'm looking for these next 9 games. I don't care if they go 6-3 and 3-6. If you're pointing up, that's all that matters. I do want to say one last thing. The Chicago Bears are now public enemy number 1 right now. Even though I thought they were dumb for trading a 2nd-round pick for Chase, Omar Khan, I think you're brilliant, and I will continue to say that. I don't care what anybody says. You've got to root against the Chicago Bears. If I know they're not playing, I know they played the Patriots a few weeks ago. If they were playing the Patriots next week, I'd be rooting for the Patriots. I would be rooting for the Ravens if the Ravens were playing them. But you want to see that pick go down. And there's a good possibility for them to lose a lot of games going for, and you get a very good number 2 pick there. So I think that's fantastic. There's a lot of things you could do with that number 2 pick, but I want to caution you, the last time that they had 3 picks in the top 34, only one of them were any good. Number 34 was Cornell Lake, 1989. The other 2, not even going to bring them up right now. Brought them up way too much this week. Good dudes, I'm sure, but not great football players for this team. So thank you so much, everybody. It was great hanging out with you. We are going to be back next week, and we are going to be talking about the New Orleans Saints, the Pittsburgh Steelers, and what fork in the road the Steelers decided to take. For Tony Defeo, for Shannon White, my name is Bryan Anthony Davis. Just when you think you've got all of the answers,
we keep changing the questions.
Shannon, do you have something to say? He's not the best color man in the world for nothing, folks. We'll see you next week. Oh, good Lord. Let me end this. That was just way too good.